Welcome to In the Know with Nina. I'm your host, Dr. Nina Crowley. I'm the Director for Clinical Thought Leadership and Partnership at SICA, where we partner with healthcare clinicians and providers to offer body composition solutions. Today, I'm so excited to be joined by Dr. Karlie Intlekofer. She's the Global Research Scientist at Matrix Fitness, and she's just a delight to talk to. We could definitely fill your ears talking all day. So we'll try to stay on track and talk about I think what's going to be a very interesting topic for you all.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we've had a few nice conversations about all the things in our world. So as behaviorally focused PhD folks in this sort of medical and fitness area, I think we have a lot to offer and a lot of expertise to bring. But if you could share a little bit about your history and what brought you to doing what you're doing now, that would be so great for us to sort of anchor in.
Sure thing. Well, more than 20 years ago, I was very interested in how the body works. And so I went to CSU, Colorado State, and was lucky to become certified as a personal trainer at that time. I was so curious about how the brain and the body work together. And so I really wanted to focus on neuroscience and behavior when I went to graduate school. I earned my doctorate in that and was really focused after that on how exercise changes the brain. And I just wanted to shout it from the rooftops because the studies and the amount of evidence, it was just pushing so hard that we all need to move towards more active lifestyles. But what I found is in academia, when you're so focused on teaching and grant writing, you don't always have that option to really get the word out. So I was so grateful when several years later I was able to work to move towards Matrix Fitness headquarters in Wisconsin and to be able to help more people live active lives and to communicate what the science is showing. So my goal is always to help that operator, that personal trainer, that fitness professional who really wants to make sure that they're pulling every lever they can to get more of their community healthy, moving, and to really help that quality of life piece.
Wow, I love that. And you do it with such a really, energetic and genuine vibe. So that, of course, I think really sticks and works for people. So thank you. And the other thing I wanted to highlight too is that we're gearing up to go to the Health and Fitness Association conference or meeting this year in March in San Diego, and you're going to be speaking at it. So I'd love to hear. I won't be there myself, so if I can get any kind of little sneak preview, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I've been honored to be selected as presenting an education session, and I wanted to focus on muscle. All the social listening that we're doing to see what people are asking about, what they're Googling about, what they're using their LLMs for. People are curious about muscle. And at the same time, if you look at those social media, those popular hashtags, many are about muscle. And there's also a lot of disagreement and a lot of pervasive myths. And in my mind, the most important thing for us to do in the fitness sphere is remove those obstacles to taking action, remove those myths that might hold someone back, because we want people to stay at our facilities. We want people to enter that gym with confidence, to have a sense of what they're working towards and how to get what they want. And so what we're seeing is, yes, people are curious about muscle. They want to build muscle. They don't always understand the different routes to that. And sometimes they're kind of being held back by those pervasive myths that you can find on maybe your Instagram feed, for example.
So you're going to be tackling that. It sounds like your topic, muscle health gains that drive member loyalty, will also probably be popular because that's really kind of tying it back to what they're there to see is how to keep people engaged. And I know we've talked a lot about engagement. So how do you tie those two together?
Well, what we find is that there's so many instances where a person joins a fitness facility, joins a gym, and they have these goals and aspirations. Now, some of them are couched internally, like they want to have a place to blow off steam, to have better stress management. And that's pretty much guaranteed, even if you do very low intensity exercise. But as we're seeing this emphasis on strength, power, muscle endurance, as we're seeing all the research come in, people are learning more and more about the advantages of putting that effort into the weight room. They don't always know how to do it. They don't always even have the confidence to take the first few steps. And so in my mind, it's about getting a clear path to getting those muscle-based advantages. We know that the fitness consumers have shifted their emphasis from cardio, which was, of course, a leading reason people got gym memberships in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, to now they are really curious. What is the mix of strength equipment? What does the weight room look like? Is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to find what I want? Are there machines there that I think are important, or the racks, the rigs, whatever they're looking for? So as the fitness consumer gets more sophisticated in making this choice, we want to empower that fitness professional to know the advantages of what they have and to know how to leverage that. So again, the member gets the results they're after. It's no secret that if you go to the gym frequently and you're not really tuned in to getting a result, or you're not getting something that's really easy to measure or easy to see, it's no secret that that can affect motivation. And we're just trying to do some preventive measures in place so that we're helping that member with loyalty, really, because we want them to stay active and to understand plateaus are sometimes a normal part of the course, and where else can we look to see that there's evidence of improvement based on whatever their health goals are.
Love that. And it kind of brings me to thinking a little bit about what we visualize and what we think when we hear muscle health. I think there's long been a focus on sort of the look or the aesthetic, and I know it's very important for you also to reframe that conversation around sort of function and physical achievements and longevity, quality of life. Even though some of these can also be buzzwords, I think they're really, what we're really seeing is getting involved in more, personal metrics that motivate the person. So how do we do that for an everyday kind of member or someone who's just coming into the gym?
Well, I think it's important to recognize members are listening to podcasts. Members are their social feeds are becoming tailored to their interests. So members actually have a much better understanding of what they're going after. They don't necessarily always get the programming piece. Maybe the form and technique and the skill of strength is something they're still kind of trying to understand, but they're certainly getting a lot more info that's pointing them towards the value of gaining muscle or gaining strength. So to me, it's like, how does the owner operator help them with that programming, support, facilitate, and also help them avoid common pitfalls? There are programs that you can buy online that are just a dime a dozen, but a lot of those don't take into account those personal touches that you mentioned. And if we don't integrate the person's experience, how they're doing workout to workout, how ambitious are they, how hard do they want to work, if we don't integrate those factors, it becomes really likely that we'll get a mismatch between what the customer comes to expect and actually what we deliver. So, I don't think the onus is on the end user, the member necessarily. I think it's kind of a shared responsibility for their success. And the most savvy owners and operators know that retention and loyalty all come down to that member satisfaction piece. So it's how we reflect to them what progress looks like, where they're making gains. I know you mentioned functional gains. I think that's a really important piece, because sometimes you can reflect to them something that they can do today that they couldn't do a month ago or a year ago. And that kind of comparison is really helpful. Less helpful, of course, is comparing them to the average, or comparing them to someone else in the gym, or comparing them to someone who's a professional. But those can be simple pitfalls, simple mistakes that we make. I know I had clients ask, well, how much muscle can I expect to gain in 1 month? Or, I'd get questions that really indicate they didn't have that functional capacity angle in their thinking. So yes, they had some great values that I could reflect back to them. We could align the programming with the values. We could align the results with those values. But unrealistic expectations can really harm that member satisfaction piece. So we need to make sure that we're stating things clear enough so that your average consumer can get in and find success.
Oh, you're speaking my language completely, and that patient-centered, or in this case member-centered care. And just what I think is such a double-edged sword, or just so maybe black and white, is what really works is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And yet when we're consuming social media and messaging around what other people are doing, that extrinsic maybe motivation to look like a person or be like that person, it's pretty clearly different than what actually works for you, which is just like you said, aligning with your values and figuring out how to do this in the context of your own, kind of N of one.
Oh yeah, and I think that nuance is not cool on social media. Nuance in a title of a paper or in someone's explanation, that doesn't turn heads. It doesn't get the instant like. And that's really a major challenge, that you have to have a message that's simple enough. But then how do you inject the nuance piece, or the, oh, by the way, social support really matters for this to work, or, oh, by the way, interpretation of personalized data really matters for this to work. There's so many, oh, by the ways. And so I think that's a challenge I'm always up against. And many other science communicators like yourself notice this. We have to make the message simple enough, but it also has to leave space for the outliers or the personal experience or the, I don't want to do that lift because this isn't comfortable in my body or whatever. We have to leave space so that it can be interpreted and followed in a way that serves more people.
Oh, you put that really well. That is, I struggle with that all the time because I definitely tend towards the more nuanced, the longer form communication, and I think we've had examples of where that eat less, exercise more, simple, very simple message, and probably fairly true if you actually get down to what actually might work, but being completely ineffective at actually helping the individual change their behavior. I also feel like nowadays we've evolved a tiny bit beyond that, but the message now is eat more protein and move more and lift weights, right? So, like, is that simplified messaging helpful at moving the needle on people's behavior change?
You know, bringing up is referencing that new dietary guide, that inverted pyramid that RFK Jr. has come out with. And there are some advantages to that. It is putting protein front and center, but there's some disadvantages also, and certainly some controversy about his emphasis on, for example, red meat. Also, how do we get a more meat heavy diet without increasing saturated fat? Saturated fat in most people is going to drive a rise in LDL cholesterol. We're not going to get into the heart stuff, but the point is, we know that LDL cholesterol, when that rises, that is a heart disease risk factor that's very well borne out. It's not controversial like a lot of the other statements about healthy fats, but it presents, I think, an opportunity, because I look at that and I see that people are more focused on maintaining more muscle. And so as someone who's in the fitness industry, I think it's good because it tells us that BMI alone is not enough, or just knowing your body weight or just staying under a certain size is not enough. And we're seeing that borne out from higher level research that's looking at things like mortality risk. These aren't terms anyone wants to hear. I'm aware of that, but research is a little bit limited into what we investigate. A lot of it comes down to risk, right? And so we're finding that people with more powerful, more muscular bodies, they fare so much better, especially in advanced age. And, it's no secret we have population aging as a major thing that's changing our lives. We're seeing a lot more research about healthy aging, and it's great. But how do we translate something like mortality risk into something that sounds like fun, that we want to achieve, that kind of game-based messaging that I'm always kind of leaning towards? So I like to look at it as being more resilient, being more capable, having more daily energy. And yes, people with more muscle mass have all of those advantages. You can develop those advantages at any age. I think a phrase that I heard maybe like 10 years ago that I thought was kind of funny, quirky, and stuck with me is harder to kill. Now, that might not be a phrase that any organization wants to adopt, but it is kind of a fun way to position it. Harder to kill. Oh, cool. And as someone who's always thought ninjas were really cool and really loved, learning about like resilience, that resonated with me. It's not going to resonate with everyone else. But certainly the messaging is a challenge, right? How do we get people to come in, and how do we adjust those expectations so that we can actually deliver on at least some of their expectations? How do we maybe pull in some of those expectations from things that are unnecessary or unrealistic or overly aesthetically focused? That, I think, it takes a careful touch from a fitness professional. So at the end of the day, it's still those relationships. It's still that warm, empathetic support, that warm social atmosphere, that environment that's created by a fitness facility, to have a culture that is recognizing consistency, recognizing grit and determination, recognizing someone who comes in reliably and does their best. Those environments might matter more than the research bears out. Of course, the research is limited. It's looking at endpoints like mortality. They're not going to be quite as good at showing us what the best fitness facility environment entails. But there is some research that's showing us that you do need more interpretation beyond, oh, you weigh this much, you want to lose weight. We need so much more in that conversation to help the end user persist.
Well, this is why they have us in the research realm and not creating the social messages. Harder to kill though is pretty good as a headline. But to that point, I think something that we had talked about too is sort of what keeps people engaged and motivated. We know one reason that people might disengage is that maybe their progress feels invisible or they can't see it. Maybe that's because we are only looking at weight or BMI or something like that as a outcome metric. So from a behavioral kind of science lens, what kind of feedback or markers do you feel like really help people stay motivated when maybe their results, whether that be fitness results or changes in body composition, aren't fully obvious yet?
I think that as fitness consumers become more sophisticated, their annoyance with BMI is amplified. And it's really hard because, the history of BMI, which is just, a simple metric, the history of it is rooted in population level understanding. It's looking at groups of people and assuming averages. I mean, from the 1800s when it was developed, that's what it was for. And then I think it was like Ansel Keys in 72 who really coined this term and really emphasized it. And yet, if you look at that original paper, and you can find it online, even Ansel Keys was like, this is not for individual level measurement. This is for population level, demographic level, epidemiology type studies. And yet, in our healthcare system in the US in particular, we are using it, as kind of a starting point for physicians. And I know that they are limited in time, they are limited in the tools they have access to. But with things like BIA, as you're mentioning, we're gaining tools that are you can get a quick answer. It doesn't, it's not like grabbing the tape measure and pulling it around someone's body and making them exhale and getting a measurement. That has utility, and we call that an anthropometric measure, but it is not fast, easy, and without consequence that individual feels judged for their waist circumference and they don't enjoy the experience. Similarly, you might remember like 30 years ago, skin calipers. I know that I was trained on them. Skin calipers where they grab the fat, they wiggle, they do those measurements. Nobody really likes this experience, right? So having options that can move beyond that BMI, that kind of not the best metric, but can add more information without overwhelming the patient or the member, it's so important. Because when these more sophisticated fitness consumers are tuning into podcasts, they are aware that they can have a wearable help them with their daily exercise motivation, get that feedback from how their exercise is going. They are aware that they can get more personalized data, more personalized information to act on. And so I think that it's really the operators, it should be their goal to keep up with the times and keep moving forward with the tools that they offer and the personalized data that they offer. All that being said, what the research bears out is that a warm social connection at a fitness facility is huge. There are facilities that their business model is, hey, you have a key to the facility, come and work out. And that can work for some consumers. But we know that we're not getting the maximum percentage of our community members to come into our facilities, right? I think that HFA commonly references it's like something like that 80%, 20%. 20% may have the membership. That doesn't mean that they're coming in regularly, by the way. And then that 80% is we're not able to reach them for some reason. So I think being able to combine some personalized guidance, and then for most facilities, having that front desk staff trained up, that personal trainer trained up on best practices for supporting member autonomy, I think that can go a long way to helping everyone feel supported. And if they want personalized data, that's an option at that facility. I think we're going to move towards that. I mean, if we look at the wearables trend alone, it's telling us something. That consumer behavior is saying they value personalized data. How was my workout? How hard did I work out? What was my intensity like? But one downside of those heart rate wearables, and there's many to choose from, is that that is actually probably more angled towards the person who's doing regular cardio and may have cardio based goals. Less clear is how we can reflect member progress for something like muscle strength. And so I think that's one area where, a BIA has a great opportunity, because if a person's making gains after, let's say like 2 months of lifting regularly, we can reflect that back to them, even if their scale doesn't change. And by the way, the scale is such a lagging indicator that it oftentimes takes a while to change, especially since it's reflecting things like their eating behavior. And we know that when we work out more, some people notice an increase in their appetite and they heed that increase by eating more. So it can kind of hide the calorie burn that, people of the 80s and 90s were really keen on measuring. So yeah, so I think that the tools, they're getting more integrated than ever, not only at the individual level with wearables, which again, benefit cardio, but also something like a BIA analysis, which is going to give us feedback about how that muscle gain goal is going.
Totally. And I think, I of course this is my area and this is what I think and consume and talk about all day long, but I see so much misinformation and disinformation and confusion around muscle and calling it, just like the terms, we talk about this a lot here, but calling lean body mass versus lean soft tissue assessed by DEXA, for as opposed to skeletal muscle is assessed by MRI, and then like the BIA as it's validated to one of those reference methods. There's so much confusion about that, and so many entrepreneurial folks taking advantage of that confusion and promoting products that might, increase or decrease one of those factors without really people digging into the nuance, which I think is where we maybe thrive. So I think that's a really important sort of thing that we need to be educating and talking about in these spaces. Another thing that you said that I wanted to kind of come back to also is just the frequency and how long it takes to gain muscle, to see change in body composition, and how sometimes these wearables and even home devices are giving people feedback on the daily level, hourly level even. But what we know about body composition is that it takes a while to change. And so I also like that being done in a sort of protected environment where there are healthcare professionals or they are fitness professionals who are able to give that feedback. So it's not just like you at home by yourself trying to figure this out and seeing changes and freaking out if it's going in the direction that you don't want. I like that being done in a safe space, I guess we would say.
Yeah, when you talk about psychological safety, it's really important. There have been studies that looked at the combination of BIA and warm coaching, or coaching that's kind of helping people recognize those small wins. And what they show is that BIA all by itself can help some people, but most people rely on a little bit of extra help to interpret what it means for their next steps, for how to apply what they're, what is it telling them to do. Getting that combination, that's a winning combination. But it's really got to use some of these numbers, some of the data in a more neutral way. So I think that there's an education piece here, because if you are a fitness professional, and most fitness professionals are in better than average shape, and you're speaking with someone who's got a goal that might include a loss of body fat, what are the words they use? What are the terms they use? How do they describe how are they describing a graph of someone's, how their body composition is going, for example? That actually is very consequential, because if a coach is using judgmental language, or the member gets the sense that something is bad or not good enough or not trending right, that can really erode their sense of competence, that things are working out, that they're doing the right things in the facility. Instead, I hope that fitness professionals see this as a great opportunity, because if you have a member who wants to use this data, they're already self-selecting and telling you that they care about the outcome. So they're already telling you that. And the outcome is not limited to BIA. Fitness professionals are very good at reflecting back advantages to their functional capacity. And I think the more that they use plain language, the better. If you can take someone's gain in endurance, or maybe they feel like they're moving better, or maybe they have less fear, and you can tie that to how they're going to what they're noticing when they climb stairs, that it feels easier, that they have more energy at the end of the day, or that they can keep up with the kids or the grandkids. These are all the kinds of the nuggets of daily life that give our life meaning and add to the quality of our life. And you know, study after study shows exercise drives an increase in quality of life, even before there's any meaningful change on the scale. And I love studies like this because
That's worth doing. I mean, at any
so
level.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So many studies that are, you know, older, you know, I would read them and I wouldn't get a sense of that. And it's only until, you know, maybe the last 20 years or so that we started to recognize that there's a lot going on upstairs in the brain. When you see yourself do the thing you said you were going to do, I'm going to go to the gym 2 times a week or 3 times a week or whatever it is. And there's things that happen in terms of how you perceive pain. I know there was a recent study in the last year here that found that, hey, we're thinking about exercise for people with knee pain. We're thinking about that wrong. It's not just that more muscle protects the joints and reduces pain. That's true. But it's also that people move with more confidence, that they, because they're moving their body more, they actually think about pain differently. It's that the brain changes how it views you know, a feeling of discomfort in the body. The brain changes how we view that. So I think all of this research is converging and it's all pointing in the same direction. Get more active, do things that challenge you. And from my perspective, the exercise physiologist angle, I see cardio and strength training on more of a continuum than probably most, because some folks out there are picking a rep range and an intensity level when they're doing their exercises that actually might fit better into the cardio model than the muscle building model. So part of my goal with this HFA talk was just like, hey, can we clarify some things here? Are we all on the same page? Can we beat the same drum so that positive rhythm of why we're doing this and how it works can be better understood? Because I see a lot of confusion out there, and I don't want it to be any reason for someone to delay getting that gym membership, going to that planned workout, getting in the weight room, and getting the results that they want.
Wow. I mean, I wish everybody were of this mindset and able to speak about it so eloquently. I think it's beautiful. And also, you know, really highlights to me as you're talking a reminder that the expectations of people coming in the door are, I don't want to say fixed, but they're coming in with some baggage, right? And they've had experiences in the past. Everything you're saying, like, yeah, sign me up. I'll go to the gym if that's the experience, right? But I think there's a new sort of segment of the population that maybe didn't fit in that 20% before. You know, they've had past experiences, it wasn't for them. People in larger bodies, you know, have described time after time how it was not a psychologically safe place for them. They didn't feel welcome, they didn't feel comfortable to do the things that they maybe have always wanted to do. But maybe with the GLP-1 and medications that have helped change this for people with obesity and other health conditions, this is an opportunity for people to get to a space where they can start to build out that relationship with movement that is so positive and beneficial. But we've also got to change the reasons why people are doing it to be focused on intrinsically motivated stuff from within, and not just, I'm only going to do this if I see this outcome.
Yeah, that is a really good point. You know, I'd kind of mentioned plateaus are common. They're normal. They're part of the process. And I think by normalizing some level of that knowledge, it can actually it can help that member's lifetime value, because they're going to persist more if they recognize that, hey, I've been stuck at the same bench level for 3 months. This isn't necessarily abnormal. I also think that there's a hidden opportunity here. If you don't have a long history of exercise, a lot of us, if we did sports in adolescence, we had huge advantages we didn't even know about. I was taught how to bench when I was like 13 from someone who was really good and was a strength coach. Like, not everyone gets that opportunity, right? Getting that other 80% means that we're welcoming people in who may not have an extensive history of knowing what to do, knowing how to program, knowing what to do first or how to sequence the workout. That's another area that I see a lot of interesting choices being made. And so I look at it as opportunity. We can have more people, we can serve more people, and we can help them reach those goals. We know more than we used to. So if we're training the way we did in the 90s, that's just like, we got to keep updating what we know about. And something that social media is doing that's positive is pushing fitness professionals and members alike to keep learning, to keep their minds open. Now, not all the influencers are easygoing about the recommendations. Some are pretty pedantic. Some it's like more of the bro science where I just hear it and I just go, oh man, there's like 15 studies that refute what this guy or girl is saying. But ultimately, this kind of the question marks in people's minds are always a good thing because it means that they're seeking to understand more. They're seeking to get more info that can be actionable. And that's kind of where I see BIA. That data is so important. It's not the end all be all on whether someone feels valued at their facility. That probably takes more of that social leverage, right? That social component of someone helping contextualize what this info means or how we can take action to change the outcomes if that's what they're after. But it just means that, adherence and motivation, there are always going to be challenges. And we know that coaching style and social connection matter. We know that people want more information. So then if this is the case, then the next step for the industry is to say, what are the best practices? How do we deliver the best experience? What makes them want to come back for more? And how do we get that 2 visits a week or more? That seems to be a critical threshold. How do we support that the best possible way? So I like more data. I'm like, show me the numbers. I want to see it. And I'm happy to say that we're seeing more research that's showing us what success can look like, not just in someone coming more often so that they stick with us, but so that they feel satisfied, that they can see that someone is helping perhaps to reflect to them the areas in which they're improving. Really simple metric that is very effective is streaks. If you have someone who's coming to your facility and they're very reliable about showing up on Mondays, letting them know that this is their 8th Monday in a row or their 3rd Monday in a row, especially when they're starting out, those little, hey, I see you, I notice you, you're killing it. Those little positive nudges, they make a big difference. So if there's an operator out there who has a front desk staff who can see that, that customer log and can reflect back some positives, great to see you again. I know that was always one of the things that I mentioned. Those little touch points, those little social touch points, even if you don't know the person very well yet, that can get some positive momentum going. And for the more established personal trainer, you can frame the question to get positive responses. So I know one thing that I used to use when I was doing group exercise was, that feels great. What was your favorite part of the workout? That works really well because your participant is now thinking of what went well. And mm-hmm. If there's one-on-one personal training, what felt easier than you expected? Letting them know, giving them that opportunity that they can think back on the workout and come up with something positive to say. You're seeding, some really nice ideas that can grow into reminders for that person about why they need to stick with it and the value that they're getting out of it. So I think that there's some art to these conversations. I know that AI is entering the scene in a big way and can help with some of this. But I think at the end of the day, it's seeing familiar faces in a place where certain behavior norms are met that's going to contribute the most to psychological safety. I want some AI input. Don't get me wrong. I want personalized input. I want numbers associated with my success. But at the end of the day, it's still a lot is this social climate. Are we making this a fun experience, an enjoyable experience? And that's a big challenge because as we know, exercise is not easy. And some people don't even like to sweat or don't like the feeling of exertion, especially if they're more new to it. So it's about having the right rate of progression, monitoring those expectations and reflecting back to that member. Here's the ways I'm seeing success, or what are the ways that you are seeing success even better? Because then when they're saying it, they're hearing it, you're hearing it. And it puts that positive vibe in place that we all want from a place that we're working out.
Such good conversational tips too. I'd actually love to hear if you have any other thoughts on maybe specific to giving feedback on muscle mass, or other body composition parameters, because I think one of my fears is that we sometimes take this data and, like you said, compare to others where they should have been. We know we don't love that word. Kind of taking all of these behavioral components together. Do you have some ideas for how to give that feedback in a way that sort of ticks all your boxes, from a behaviorally appropriate, safe, comfortable emotional space to actually help move people forward?
Yeah, I'm lucky that some people have already investigated this. And so, like, there's one study that I can recall that's in older adults who were in a resistance training program. So it's like, okay, we're going to see what works best. This study also has an advantage that you might be interested in that they used BIA to help reflect progress back to the member. And at the end of this paper, in the like conclusions and discussions, some of the things that they emphasize really make a lot of sense. One, they're always emphasizing autonomy in those members. Yes, they had a resistance strength protocol that they were following. So there were some decisions made for those participants in the study. But how we can generalize this is that everyone wants to feel like they're in control of their fitness journey, their strength journey, their health journey. Everyone wants to feel like they have control, that it's not just an idea being foisted upon them. It's not just because the doctor said you should exercise, which is always a tough conversation. It's using that word should, as we just called out. That's like, try not to. Should is a real strong word that implies a negative consequence. And if we can, maybe we can discuss this without using that term. But nonetheless, what this study was showing is that a warm coaching climate mattered a lot. BIA on its own only helped a small subset of individuals stay motivated. But if you combine it with reflecting back to that individual that they have choice, reflecting back, that's the autonomy piece, reflecting back to them that they are gaining confidence in their movements or that they're performing something better than before, that hits the competence side. And then the social side hits connection with others, feeling like you have a sense of belonging. Now, for someone who's really savvy about motivated behavior, you might have noticed I hit on 3 points. I
I'm
hit on
thinking
the
self-determination theory all day.
self-determination theory. That's right. You nailed it. So, Ryan and Desi, this early work really identified that these are 3 critical goals that we need to make. We need to make it a priority for helping someone changing behavior, because behavior change is hard. It's very hard. Think about all the things that people want to change about their behavior and how many trial and errors it takes to actually get to that endpoint. You can think of any habit, and it's very hard to change behavior. We're kind of rooted in our habits, right? But that competence focus to kind of reflect back to the person how their physicality is changing, their functional capacity is changing, that supportive social climate, we're connected, we're in this together, we're all doing our best every day, that meaningful rationale. So something that I know that you've mentioned in previous conversations that I love is tying a person's plan to their values. How can we align those to make it so that now we're tapping into identity? And I think that's actually one of the most powerful ways, especially if you have a good connection with someone, to support them in motivated behavior, helping shape that sense of identity that they're after, that aspirational thing that they're trying to change. I know, even just mentioning to my own clients the word active, they have a goal of being active. They want to stay active. They want to stay capable. They want to have that endurance to do the things they want to do and not get exhausted. Active is an important word. It's pretty positive, right? They want to keep themselves in motion and keep themselves capable. So, and I think, like, if you're with an older clientele, then certainly independence, stability, fatigue resistance, you're gaining this resilience that keeps you moving forward in your day, so you're not getting tired as easily, so that climbing stairs is not as hard. Tying it to their everyday life, their activities of daily living. Again, research has done all the analysis for me. That works. It definitely helps exercise motivation.
Wow, I love that. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to listen to this over again because there's so many things you said that are just so key, especially for younger, professionals starting out, where you've been doing this for a long time and learned some really important lessons. And if we can share that with the generation to have that be their starting point, I think that's also really important, and we have kind of that responsibility to do.
Poo the aesthetic goals because some clients are going to have a very specific aesthetic goal. It's just that when it comes to long-term exercise motivation, we need more, as you were mentioning, than just the external validation. We need to have this intrinsic feeling that I know this makes me feel good. I know this gives me more patience with my husband. I know I sleep better. I know this is part of my sense of identity. This is part of my community's norms. This is part of my, so I think that it's not to say that external validation is not helpful at all. It's just to say that people are complicated and life is long. And if you want to retain a lifelong member, that lifelong loyalty probably will take more than just, I want to look good for bikini season or, any of those types of goals. I'm not against them. They matter. But at the end of the day, it's how we feel that drives that motivated behavior so much more than an appearance related goal.
So that's an important point too, because as someone who's done a lot of work when I was in a clinical space here, if you're really doing patient or member centered care, even if the person's goal is weird or different or something different than your values, and even to say shouldn't be just based on looks, right? If you're really doing that, you know, client centered care, you've got to take that into the equation. And that's not to say that you can't share your experience and the evidence to do true evidence based care, but it's an important piece of that to really understand someone's motivations because that is their values. They're giving you clues through every conversation you have to be able to help move them towards their own goals that aren't just yours.
Yeah, I had related to this, I had a client who reflected back to me that her pants were more comfortable. Who doesn't want that? I mean, the waistband being more comfortable, that's like a great gain. And it challenged me because I was avoiding talking about aesthetics and the way that this client's body was maybe changing as a result of her efforts. I was trying to avoid that, avoid. But her reflecting back to me, what a huge boost in confidence that was like, oh yeah, I that's maybe one of the downsides of doing a lot of research reading is I will focus a lot on, okay, I think this is going to be helpful. But sometimes it is a small aesthetic change that someone notices. In this case, it was just, oh, my pants are so much more comfortable. My jacket fits me around me, no problem. That actually was a huge reason for celebration. And so it's not that I'm against reflecting back some of those things. It's just that the research bears out that our brains are very powerful and that we kind of need to use a number of different crowbars to get people to think about how they feel and how the workout is helping them feel better. Ultimately, if you ask anyone on the street, do you want to feel better? Most people will resoundingly say yes, right? So that's why maybe I over index a bit on how people feel. And that is tricky with exercise because as we know, a hard cardio workout, I just used the word right there. It feels hard. Hard work is hard. Sweating a lot, breathing very fast. That's hard. Similarly with the weight room, really hard sets. I mean, there are times when you know what you're supposed to do and you're kind of almost dreading it. And I think that this is somewhat normal. You know it's going to be hard. You know it's going to take a lot of effort. You got to put your game face on to move that weight or whatever. Sometimes it can be difficult, right? It's going to be it's not going to be comfortable. And then we're not even getting into the, oh man, how are you moving the next day when that delayed onset muscle soreness comes into play? And that can also erode motivation and make people feel less competent if they don't know how to interpret it. So I think that, again, as AI comes to complement the service that we offer in fitness facilities, there needs to be kind of an understanding that a fitness consumer doesn't always know, hey, am I feeling pain in my joint? Am I feeling pain in my muscle? Is this good pain? Is this bad pain? And the word pain alone is very layered and hard to understand. So I do think the personal touch is always going to be timeless, but AI will help to fill the gaps, I believe, so that we can serve more people and get and deliver an exceptional experience for them in facility.
Wow. Well, what a nuanced conversation that we've been able to have. And I think also some, really key, clear, simple take homes that people can use. So thank you so much for joining me for this. Wanted to just give you a chance to share where to follow you, where to follow Matrix, where we can find you and stay in touch.
Yeah, Matrix has a YouTube channel, and I'm mentioning it because that's where we put a lot of our podcasts. And for viewers who may not know, I had the pleasure of interviewing Nina for two of those podcasts where we really dove into some of the member-centered language, the member-centered topics, especially surrounding obesity, since that term is obviously loaded and we've got a lot of stigma to still work on eradicating. So you can find those podcasts on the Matrix YouTube channel. You can find some of my writings and some of my work and recordings on the Matrix Research Hub. So we're doing our best to spread the word globally about the latest research, some of which I've mentioned today. And certainly, Nina, if you want any of those references, because a lot of this isn't my thought, I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants, I'm happy to share those with you if it'd be helpful to any of your viewers.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a couple we could probably dive into in a future conversation too. So this is definitely, I think, the beginning of a really important conversation and relationship. And I, really appreciate you being part of my little inner circle.
Ah, my pleasure. It's a pleasure to talk with someone who loves the research as much as I do.
Well, enjoy the meeting. I'll look to social to see how it goes, and we'll have some follow up conversations coming here shortly. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.